And ready to open up to you guys about the game. Let's get moving.
How tough is it to have his season end after kind of what he's gone through just to get back?
Yeah. For seeing Marcus go out and seeing Sam go out, I know it probably I always give an injury update, but he carried a little more with me with the two of them, just because one from Marcus, the leading standpoint, chances to go, so you kind of felt. And then with Sam, you knew it was coming for him to take these steps forward, coming back off the knee, and I think even over the last few weeks, you really felt that even more. So disappointed, but certainly know that, so much work that he put in, it's going to provide him for a long time.
And then with Josh, what was it that appealed to you about him to sign him this summer? Because Jeff was here last year, obviously. What did appeal about with Josh, and what does he add at this point?
Yeah, I think the experience part for sure was a big part of that. As you're going to go, just the history and different perspective, and so that was really the reason behind it. We're really glad Jeff's here with us, obviously with some history within the system that can help. And when we visited with him, hey man, doesn't have to have everything. What's the part that you would feel comfortable with if called upon? And so we reiterated that to him today. But these are two really good teammates, and so. With Marcus, we're not sure where we're at yet. We thought this was the best decision for us, over these next two games.
Who will step in for Cosby? Will it be Wiley or Allegretti?
Yeah, that's how we're at right now with Andrew. Correct.
Okay. And then just looking at the injuries overall, I know we always come back to this, but I mean, when you look back over things you did throughout the season, there's really no way to prevent these injuries, but is there anything you would change going into the next season about, handling this? I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to honestly evaluate every part of things that we can. For me, from the coaching side, you never want a season like this. And I also want to make sure, I don't want to waste it either, to make sure what are we learning? What are we finding out? What are the lessons that will carry forward into, next season? And I'm not thinking about them now. I'm thinking about all those today and in the moment. And so the injuries obviously are a big part of that, and having a lot of discussion on that. And so I'm just going to dig in as much as we can through the coaching and, the medical, the personnel, the players, all of it. And that's part of the evaluation at the end of the season, but it definitely calls for a deeper look, I would say, of how we do it and, how we move forward. Like you said, some things are just unpreventable. Mickey, that's the game, and every once in a while you can say that's bad luck or bad op. And so let's make sure we're not crossing the line on those.
Coach, you had mentioned yesterday that it'd be really hard for anyone you brought in from the outside to be ready for Thursday's game. With Jeff having that experience from being here last year, how quickly can he really get up to speed? Yeah,
it would still be tough, but it does help knowing that there's some history that goes along with the system and how he's done that. So Jeff's used to into a no-huddle environment, certainly plays we know that he likes and knows that he performs well. So I'd say without having to, study the entire playbook, in one night to say everything's available, you'd much prefer to say these are the featured plays, and you can condense it if it was Jeff or anybody else into that spot too.
If Marcus isn't available to go, have you guys decided how you're going to split the reps in practice between Josh and Sam and Jeff?
As we're going through for the start of it, Josh will get the lion's share of the ones today. In a short week, there's not tons that go, but Josh off to a good start. Obviously, last night began on the process for the game plan and having him in there, and this morning. So we just had our first walkthrough, and so what's the same, what's different, how will we work that? That'll be something that we'll work through over the next couple of days, but not a lot different for him as it is for anybody to say, what's the things best and how would we feature them? And so that's what we'll do. You're welcome.
Dan, on Zach Ertz, who's been out for a couple weeks, there's always the next man up mentality in the NFL, but that kind of overlooks what the guy is going through, who's
Agreed.
Probably spending the holidays on crutches and thinking about rehab and thinking about his future. I just wonder, on a personal level, for a guy of that stature and that much time in the league, what people feel about what he's going through.
Yeah, you definitely can. And he went to have the surgery in Texas last week, so before he left, I had a chance to spend an hour together. And I think the first thing after an injury that knocks you out for a season, there's a finality to it that you're not prepared for. There was no way to prepare for something like that. Then we kind of talked about what to expect, what would be ahead, And then for him, just, like when I send out a group text to the team or to the tight ends, like his response, like kind of just proves how engaged he is as a teammate. And like those are moments that even though he's not in the team meeting or there, just knowing, man, I'm not in the building, but I'm there. And, he still keeps up with everybody going through it. So it's hard for sure, especially when the finality of that injury you're not quite prepared for.
A clarifying question first. So Jeff is on the active roster. What have you seen then from Sam over the past, I guess it's been going on 2 seasons now, in terms of his growth, and how do you make that evaluation of him versus a guy like Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, the good news is that we had a whole year with Jeff, so we had some background with him as well. So we tried to give Sam as much playing time as we could from the preseason. That was a big part of the goal for the evaluation. What I've seen, a lot of the growth, we wouldn't be able to show on a stat sheet or something from this season, but it definitely has been going like this with Sam. And so going into it, we just wanted to make sure 3 guys onto the roster, and in that space, Jeff was on a practice squad. So that makes the best, way to get all 3 in the building and being ready to perform. As far as up and order and all that, we haven't determined all of that yet. But let's get the guys in the huddle first. We can figure out how we want to deploy everybody.
Beyond the preseason last year, I don't think we asked you much about Jeff. It was obviously Jaden and Marcus.
Yep.
But how does Jeff fit into that quarterback room?
Yeah, I think first thing you think about with Jeff is like extending plays. It's his ability to use his legs. He's got real speed. Those are some of the things that make Jeff unique, and I would say probably more closely related to the background of Marcus, from read and zone read option and being in the gun and working in that format. That's been a big part of his career. And so he's like super comfortable in those, types of plays. But he's been a great teammate. We loved, coaching him here last year. And so when this unfortunate opportunity came about, and a chance to add him to the mix, it was good. And there's a familiarity that you can step in quickly, and that helps, especially on a short week.
Hey, good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
I know Andrew Wiley obviously has guard tackle versatility and experience, so it's not as big of a concern there. But when you are trying to plug guys into positions they haven't been playing all season or shuffling pieces on the offensive line, what kind of challenge does that present?
Yeah, we're fortunate with Andrew because of his versatility, inside and outside. And so playing games, where he could, be a tackle, be a guard. This past time he was working at the jumbo spot. But it definitely, the continuity and the communication, that's a big deal. So I think you add the emphasis, you add, the time together in the meetings, in the walkthroughs to make sure those 2 players or, the person on either side of him, in his instance as a guard, the constant communication. But having that background, that's a big deal.
The Cowboys being eliminated from the playoffs last week, there was a player in their locker room that was quoted as saying legacy is more important to him than money. I imagine every coach would love to have that type of mentality in the locker room. Who are some of the guys in your locker room that you feel like echo that same sentiment?
Yeah, I would say the guys who just wreaked havoc, I thought, in the game was like Jeremy Reeves is one that comes to mind, like trying to double team him on a kickoff and goes to make a tackle, inside the 20. Chris Rodriguez is one that sticks to mind. I thought Bobby Wagner, guys of just consistency, steady performance. There's no roller coaster in the best of and the hardest of times. They're just that type of consistent. But I would say Wags is probably the one that comes to mind the most in the, like the highest of highs and lowest of lows. Man, he's able to maintain this level of intensity that's just remarkable. So I think that's the first person that would come to mind.
Hey, Coach, over here.
Yes.
Looking ahead not only to Thursday, but just the remainder of the season, are there things that you not only want to see, but could see from this group that could possibly bring you some solace into the offseason?
Well, for sure. I never, want a season like this, never again. But I also know that I don't want to waste it. And what do I mean by that is there's lessons that I want now that are going to carry over into next season. I don't want to apply them then. Talking about a play style and turnover margins and penalties and things that, like, I want these lessons now. I want them learned now. And so if I can have a better sense of that over those 2 games, I do think pain and adversity and dealing with those are good. That's resilience, and you show you have that. But on the field, man, I'm looking to see these lessons getting corrected and changed. And if we can improve upon that, then I think then we're not wasting the moments. And like I said, I never want it to happen, but I for damn sure don't want to, not take the lessons that are there for us to take.
Hey, Coach, back here. In deciding who starts at quarterback, how big of a factor is making sure you can evaluate the talent around them going, into next season in these next couple of weeks? How much does that play a role in your decision making going into Thursday?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. The first part is just like the function and the continuity offensively. How can we play at our best? Because it's a little bit of both sides. If you can play at your best, it's also going to allow other people to do their thing. And so it won't read exactly the same off the call sheet if Marcus isn't available as it would be with Josh, but that doesn't mean there's not important people to feature and how to get the ball to. So I think you're right on both ends that that's definitely a part of it, to make sure that some of the playmakers are finding their spots to get involved without forcing an error or making a bad decision. So it's a great point that you bring up, and we're just going to try to find the balance to perform well, cleanly, and if we can do that right, then I think the second part is able to happen.
Just before, you were talking about veterans buying in and stuff like that, but in terms of the younger guys on this team, is there anyone in particular that you think has really stepped up, especially in these last few weeks, and you're most excited to see of the younger players in these next few weeks of what they do?
Jordan McGee, you've heard me talk about him quite a bit. He's definitely somebody that just has my attention, the intensity that he plays with, the intensity that he brings. The running backs with Bill and Chris, I know Chris isn't a rookie but just doesn't have 3 years of experience in game, so those are two at that spot. Connerly, obviously. So yeah, there's definitely players, but Jordan was the first one that popped out in my mind. Ben Sinnott's another, the running backs. So Trey Burks, although he's not a younger player, he's new to us, but not younger. And so those are a few that each week I just get excited to see where they're headed.
Take three more. Hey, Dan, obviously, Bobby is one of the many free agents you guys are going to have here in a little bit. There's been a lot of discussion about maybe where he is in pass coverage. What do you lose if he's not on the field? That maybe it's not as discussed as much.
Yeah, like I said, we'll cross that when we get to the off season. What I would say, like, just in general, what his superpower is, it's tackling. And I think this past game was one of his best in that department. In line, on the edge, on screen passes. So I think that's his superpower, and why he's, damn near 2,000 of them. When you say that number out loud, it's like, holy shit. But the part of that, for me, that's the superpower. I think, it'd be like, it's so obvious, but it's like so significant.
A deep cut quarterback question that I'm always fascinated by. In this last game, you were obviously down to one active quarterback. Should the worst case have happened, and I'm sure you don't want to think about the worst case this year, but should the worst case have happened, and knowing like Luke and Colson are out, who would have played quarterback, and would Colson or Luke be one of those emergency guys if they were active?
Such an interesting question. So yes, Luke was, of course, one, and yes, Yankoff was another. But in the last game, there was not Yank or Luke. So you ready for the one that was going to be in the last one? Not David Blau, good guess. It was going to be, and obviously working in some Wildcat, Jalen Lane. You can imagine my nervousness that took place after, one's out, another's there. And so generally in that space, who's had experience, taking snaps, handing it off, doing those things. So that was who was the third, emergency into that spot last week. So on the first punt of the game, when he's out, that plan changed. And so it became Jeremy McNichol. And so, there's always a contingency planning. But, it's funny that you brought that up. That actually went through my head after the first punt. Okay, there we go. Let's keep it in secret for this week. We'll have to let you know. Yes.
Close to the vest.
Yes, such an important decision.
Hey, Coach, when you look at the last 3 weeks as this team as a whole, and I know you want to see improvements each week, what is the areas, I guess, that jump out to you that you say that I really have started to see improvement in some areas? I know you still need to see it in a lot of other areas, but are you happy with some of the things that
Sure.
you're starting to see over the last 3 weeks?
I am, Donna, and a couple things that came to mind over the last 2 weeks, and certainly the play style, how hard you have to play. That jumped out to me at New York and this past week as well. In this past game, I was very pleased to see our ball security. That had been something that had plagued us in our previous 3 games against them, and so for us to do a nice job taking care of the ball, we fumbled a snap one, but I'm saying the receivers, tight ends, running backs, that part I thought was significant for us, knowing that was going to be a big emphasis. So I like when we highlight something, this is going to be a big emphasis in the game, and then that part of taking care of it and coming through, that's a big deal to me. So for the first play to have it go our way on creating a takeaway, that was also something that I was excited about. So those would be 2 things that I'm excited about. We knew I had a 4-week plan of our division and style and attitude of how we'd play. Those are a couple of things that have jumped out offensively, the line of scrimmage, the run game, defensively, creating takeaways. We didn't get to that, but we did do on the special team side. So those are a few.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right, you're welcome. See you guys out there.